Today we're going to talk about the SCOTUS and how they've had their hands full lately. So full, in fact, that there seems to be things just dripping out of them. And I'm not talking about, wholesome good things here, no. Let's take a look. Pro-choice protesters blockade intersections near the Supreme Court ahead of Roe v. Wade abortion ruling. This was posted just today, the 13th. Two groups of abortion rights advocates took to the streets and blockaded intersections in front of the Supreme Court on Monday ahead of the historic ruling on Roe v. Wade. Video footage showed the protesters carrying signs that expressed their disagreement with a leaked draft on opinion to the high courts last month. There we go. Street closures were in effect around the D.C. building, where judges are expected to issue an opinion on Monday or Wednesday. The court's expected officially to deliver their ruling in the abortion rights case before the term ends in June or July. Police on bikes could be seen in social media footage standing beside the groups, and according to a spokesperson for the force, no arrests have been made as of 10 a.m. Eastern. The groups could also be heard in video footage leading call and response chats, such as, "What do we want? Abortion rights, when do we want them now? If we don't get it, shut it down. And Biden, get a backbone," which, yeah, I'll second that. Reuters had a live feed which ended, and we weren't able to pull up at the time of recording. Monday's protest arrives at a moment in the U.S. when debate over a person's right to an abortion has reached a fever pitch, which was further inflamed last month after a leaked draft. Everybody knows about that. It also came just a week after a late-night incident at Justice Brett Kavanaugh's suburban Washington home, where authorities said a man armed with a gun and knife threatened to kill the justice over his disagreement with Mr. Kavanaugh's views on abortion and the recently leaked draft opinion. And the protests in the streets and the response from the SCOTUS, at the time of filming, at least, is thus. Let's pull this up here. And this is from, believe it or not, this is from Fox News, but we're going to go with it because at the time of filming, that's what we had available. Supreme Court extends wait for decision in case that could overturn Roe v. Wade. The Supreme Court did not issue a decision in the case expected to overturn Roe. Supreme Court Monday again prolonged the wait for its opinion, which expected to overturn the federal right to an abortion. Last month, Politico leaked the draft, and the injustices, that feels real. Released a handful of decisions on Monday, including two immigration-related opinions, but not in the case of Dobbs v. Jackson, Women's Health Organization, a ruling that is expected to come by either late June or early July. The decision issued on Monday included ZF Automotive US Inc. Versus Luxshare Limited, Dinesby v. United States, Kemp v. United States, a case related to drug and gun crimes. Won't go there. And immigration related cases, Johnson versus Arteaga Martinez and Garland versus Gonzalez. The Dobbs case stems from a dispute over Mississippi law, which bans abortion after 15 weeks, argued in December. The case is seen as the biggest test yet for how the new 6-3 Republican-appointed majority on the court, capped with confirmation of Justice Amy Coney Barrett in 2020, will handle major controversial issues. The Supreme Court continues to finalize its ruling in Dobbs and several other cases. Before its summer recess, the investigation into who leaked the draft opinion by court officials is ongoing, because that's the most important part of this, right? Republicans are just losing their minds about it. The probe intensified in recent days. A source familiar with it to confirm to Fox News, officials were in the process of having law clerks turn over personal cell phone records and sign affidavits. It was unclear the precise extent and scope of the information being sought of the clerks. Also unclear is whether there have been compliance or whether some clerks will resist and seek legal representation. Now, I've seen a lot of interesting opinions about it may not be someone who disagrees with the decision. It may, in fact, be someone who agrees with what was listed in that draft as potentially their decision. So, yeah, investigate it. Give it a shot. Let's see if we can make this a little bit bigger for the audience here. Vandals targeted pro-life crisis centers across the U.S. since the leak of the draft, and Catholic churches have been threatened and vandalized. In addition, Nicholas John Roski was charged last week with attempted murder of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Roski of Simi Valley, California, was carrying a gun, ammunition, a knife, pepper spray, a screwdriver, zip ties, and other gear when he was arrested by Montgomery County Police. Last week near Kavanaugh's Maryland home, according to a criminal complaint, Roski told detectives that he was upset about the leak of the recent Supreme Court draft decision regarding the right to an abortion, as well as the recent school shooting in Uvalde, Texas, and believed Kavanaugh would side with Second Amendment decisions that would loosen gun control laws, according to the affidavit. House Democrats, again last week, pushed off the consideration of Senate-approved legislation that would offer additional protection to Supreme Court justices just a day after the man was charged. The House is expected to take up legislation later this week, and it's funny how quickly they are to respond. This has been echoed all over corporate media and independent media, but I haven't said it yet. It's funny how quick they are to respond to that, and meanwhile, crickets when it comes to basic legislation that could potentially at least slow down the gun violence in this country. My God. Now, I've said it before, and it should be known that we do not condone violence of any kind at Cash Coffee and Chaos, and we will continue to report events as they take place, whether we like them or we don't like them, or whether we agree or we disagree. Violence is never the answer. Historically, it has only led to more problems amongst other problems. And I've said that again. I will say personally, and unlike some of my critics, I personally do not condone violence of any kind for any reason outside of defending oneself against physical harm or death. The fact that I even have to say this says a lot about the times that we're living in. The good news is the vast majority of the protesters share my worldview on this topic, and I would hope and assume that the vast majority of my viewers also share my worldview on this topic, even if others do not. So this was brought to my attention just over the weekend. It seemed that the Supreme Court was able to find time to put this piece of authoritarian trash into effect through judicial legislation that's, well, let's take a look at this Washington Post article here, for lack of a better way to describe it. You may have missed it. Came out on Wednesday. Supreme Court shields Border Patrol agent from excessive force claim. And I won't go through the whole thing because I know you guys love when I read the news to you. But we will go over some highlights. Divided Supreme Court on Wednesday sided with a Border Patrol agent accused of using excessive force during a confrontation, an outcome that will further limit lawsuits against law enforcement officials accused of constitutional violations. In a 6-3 decision, imagine that, the court's conservative majority reinforced protections for government officials who are generally immune from civil lawsuits when it's determined that they have acted in good faith while carrying out their duties. Justice Clarence Thomas, writing for the majority, said that in rare instances such claims had been allowed to proceed without explicit authorization from Congress, and the court should not second-guess lawmakers responsible for deciding when individuals can seek damages for constitutional violations. Because our cases have made it that clear, in all but the most unusual circumstances, prescribing a cause of action is a job for Congress, not the courts. We reverse, wrote Thomas, who was joined by Chief Justice John Roberts and Justices Alito, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett. In dissent, the court's 3 liberal justices said they would have allowed the Washington State man's lawsuit to proceed against the federal agent. Justice Sonia Sotomayor wrote that the court had absolutely immunized from liability thousands of Border Patrol agents, no matter how egregious the misconduct or result in injury. Such cases play a critical role in deterring unconstitutional conduct by federal law enforcement officers, wrote Sotomayor, who was joined by Justices Stephen G. Breyer and Elena Kagan. The case was brought in 2017 by Robert Boole, who owned the Smuggler's Inn bed and breakfast located in Washington State along the Canadian border. Boole had a complicated relationship with federal agents, according to the court's decision or a court's opinion. He sometimes served as a paid confidential informant, helping agents identify people crossing the border illegally near his property. He also provided lodging and shuttle services to those crossing illegally, driving a black SUV with the license plate Smuggler. Agents seized from the inn shipments of illegal drugs, the opinion states, and Boole was recently convicted in Canadian court on human trafficking charges. Bull sued a Border Patrol agent whom he accused of unlawfully entering his property and shoving and pushing him to the ground during a 2014 encounter involving a guest at Bull's from Turkey. The agent, Eric Egbert, checked the guest's immigration papers, which were up to date, and the guest unlawfully crossed the border into Canada that evening. The court's opinion states Bull alleged that the agent violated his constitutional rights by using excessive force and retaliating against Bull for complaining to the agent's superiors. Since then, the court has moved to restrict when individuals can bring such federal lawsuits. 2 years ago, a divided court ruled that the family of a Mexican teenager killed by a Border Control agent in a cross-border shooting could not sue in U.S. courts. Before that, the court said in 2017 that senior U.S. Government officials cannot be held liable for the alleged unconstitutional treatment of non-citizens detained after 9/11. Imagine that. Sotomayor wrote in her dissent that the majority on Wednesday had rewritten and stretched its own legal standard beyond recognition. To close the door to Bull's claim, the conduct at issue, she noted, took place on U.S. soil, and the injury was to a U.S. citizen. This case does not remotely implicate national security, she wrote, adding that Congress has not provided that federal law enforcement officers may enter private property near a border at any time or for any purpose. But Thomas said the reasoning in earlier decisions involving national security applies to Bull's case because the Border Patrol agent was carrying out his duty to stop people from illegally entering or leaving the United States. Bull, he said, had other ways to address his concerns about the agent's conduct and noted that he had filed a complaint that led to a year-long internal investigation. So that's what I guess guilty by association, by associating yourself with yourself. I mean, what is that really? Listen, what this means, folks, is that they have in effect extended a region consisting of nearly 60% of America's entire population, including the entire state of Hawaii, nearly all of America's largest cities and densest population centers, and under the guise of chasing after illegals. This was, of course, provided by the ACLU. Nice map here to show the areas affected. You know, they've essentially thrown our Fourth Amendment rights against unlawful searches and seizures right out the window. I mean, this goes light years beyond civil asset forfeiture. Again, the ACLU provided this map that indicates the areas that are going to be affected by this ruling. So again, folks, I mean, that's Chicago. That's like basically the you know, from New York to Boston, everything. The entire state of Florida, stop it already. Everything from Seattle to Portland to San Francisco to Santa Cruz. I mean, and this is going all the way up to you know, Houston Metro. I mean, my God, take a look at it. ACLU.org. It's worth a look, or just give it a Google. You'll find 50,000 of these maps. So again, folks, you know, I want to talk about Roe v. Wade doesn't open up the floodgates for other violations against civil rights. I guess it doesn't have to. They are doing this on their own. Then the entirety of the right is doing this completely on their own. The Republican Party as an entity is doing this, and they absolutely will not stop. It is incredibly irresponsible, as well as it is irrationally negligent to assume that gay marriage is off the table, that interracial marriage is off the table, that birth control is off the table, that anything outside of straight, white, state-sanctioned missionary is off the table. I laugh at that, but it's not funny. You know, when somehow these folks have managed to take the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution for nearly 2/3 of the country and just completely wipe it out. This is solely the work of two factions. Punch that over here. This is solely the work of two factions working in tandem within the Supreme Court, which is why the phrase Christo-fascist has been making its way into common American English. So I ask the audience, how would you describe these people and their goals of what they want for the rest of us? How would you describe the people who are obsessed with your kids? How would you describe the people who are obsessed with genitals? How would you describe the people who are obsessed with your genitals, what you do with your genitals, and with whom and where? How would you describe the people who are not only afraid of doors, but especially doors that lock? And don't worry, you're not going to hurt my feelings.